So, I made a promise not too long ago that I was going to show how to make grass. So, we're going to do this. Pop into my UV image editor. I'm going to open some grass blades, which essentially looks like this. Perfect. Get rid of that one. I'm going to open another one, because I have more than one set of grass blades. Just like that. Perfect. Should still have those in there. Yeah. I'm going to open another one. Not sure what this one looks like. I don't want that one. Okay. So I've got my two grass blades. We'll start with this one. So I need 6 that are the same, and then one additional one for this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to 3D image editor. I'm going to add plane. I'm going to go up to the side view. I'm just going to put it up, and I want it to meet that bottom piece there. Next up, I'm going to swap onto pivot point of the 3D cursor. I'm going to scale it down just to meet that line here. And I'm going to scale it inwards with S and X, because I don't want it to be too thick. So I'm just going to scale it up. Let's make sure I'm going to separate these two so you can see both. Make sure I try and get the same ish. Doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to change it. Up one, and then up one finally, and scale inwards, because it's got to have the point. I think that will do for that. So if I unwrap that, that looks quite perfect. So now I'm just going to move it around to make it line up roughly with this. Doesn't have to be perfect in the slightest. Because once I've got this, I'm actually going to merge these two at the top, center. As long as it doesn't go off the page, which I think it does slightly there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subdivide there, join, and now if I select them all, I can adjust here as well. Essentially I want as little geometry as I can without going over the edges. It's a little bit here. And okay, I think that works. I'm now going to go into object mode again, duplicate, put one to the left, unwrap this one separately. Actually, not separately, I'm just going to move it over. And again, line this one up with this. Same again, this bit's a bit tedious, I'm afraid, but once you've got all of them, you're pretty much done. Just line these up. Brilliant. And next. Again, just going to move it along. So if I just swap between these, you can see that they all have their own ones. Apologise, this bit's not particularly exciting. What I might do is I might finish these off and then I'll resume the recording, just so I don't bore anyone to death with a combination of my monotonous voice and monotonous actions. So I'll finish this one. Okay. Okay. So I'll be back with you once I finish the rest of these. Hello again. So I've gone through everything. As you can see, I've got that one, that one, that one, this one, this one, this one, and you can see it for this last one, due to a different shape, I've done it slightly differently. But I've again lined it up, but I've put a line down the center, which these don't have, in order to get the proper shape at the top. Next up, before we move on to the stalk ones, we're actually going to make a material for these. So they're all going to use the same material. That's a particle system, apologise. They're all going to use the same material. I'm going to call it grass blades. And then we're going to go into the node editor. Don't need to diffuse. I'm going to go shaders, principal BSDF, attach that. Next we're going to go texture, image texture, and we're getting, again I get our blast grades. Is that color 1? It is. Nice, and if I swap onto material and apply it to these as well, you'll notice we have grass blades. Perfect. Another thing that we're probably going to do is give these subdivision surface modifiers, just to round them off a bit. And we'll add a little bit more to the textures as well, but we obviously just want to we'll also fix the bottom of these now that we've got the subdivision surface. So we're going to just put an extra line in at the bottom, just to remove the roundedness. The only reason I don't put it all the way to the bottom is because if you do that, then you end up with doubles, and then I'll accidentally remove them. I'm also going to put one up here, just to sort of pull this up. Perfect. Next up, I need the gloss, non-color data, roughness, and finally the normal. Attach that with the normal color. Check rendered. Obviously I haven't got any lights in this scene, but you can see the grass look to them. We'll do a couple more changes as we go in a minute, but for now that is all we need. Normally I would show you also the glass stalks, which I have here somewhere, these, but again these are done in a very similar way, so I'm just going to leave those. If you want to do them, they're fine, that's fine. Additionally, you don't need to have my exact textures, you can have any textures that work in a similar way. You generally don't want a background unless you can work around it, but you just want to line it up along the insides of these in order to get just rip it from the texture. Next up, I'm going to duplicate all of these and I'm going to shove them to a different layer because I want to keep those intact. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have this be my primary piece. I'm going to turn on, and I'm just going to skew these a bit and rotate it right down. Making sure not to unwrap them. Just putting them all in together. Obviously keeping the bottom intact and attached to the floor. Doesn't have to be perfect, as with all of these, because nature's not particularly perfect. I want to avoid them overlapping, but you don't really have to. Final one. I'll put this in here. It's meant to be a bit dead, so just don't want to take that off the floor too much. But next up, I'm going to smooth all of these. Now, if we look at that in rendered mode, it's like a small grass tuft. If you see it, you notice that not all our pieces of grass look identical, which is exactly what we want. I'm going to then select all. I go Control A, rotation and scale. I'm going to send it to center and set my origin as a 3D cursor. Now all of their origin is the same place. I'm going to hit join. So now they're all together. Next up, now this was a bit of a weird one, but I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. You'll see why in a second. I go to a different layer, add plane. Just going to scale that up a bit. That doesn't need to be perfect at all. I'm going to add in particles. So for the particle setting, I want hair. I'm going to take advanced. I'm going to use an object. I should probably name my object, make it a lot easier for me to find. So I'm doing this in a scene that I already have, which is why I've already got stuff. Grass. You can see this is obviously not what we want. That's what we want. We don't want it all to be the same size. So I'm going to put random up. And I'm going to increase the number by going into children. I'm going to use simple. I don't want it to be uniform. I'm going to set it to 100 for now. But obviously you can see that that's spread them all out very closely to, ooh, okay, lower it to 10. Didn't need that many. And that has much better turn them around. Let's adjust this a little bit. And oh, we don't want roundness because roundness brings it off the ground. Look. Don't want that at all. But we do want to sort of change the way it leans. Different ones lean slightly differently. Change model things, which is it's just minor changes. We don't really want a clump. Add more randomness to it. Small randomness. And now if I sort of zoom in and rendered view, we have a field of grass. The good thing about this is, like real grass, you get little clumps, which is what we want. I'm going to quickly add a dirt texture for underneath it. I'm just going to go for like a muddy ground or a forest ground. Ground forest. What's this one look like? That works. Just for a muddy ground underneath it. Gloss. remember to set non-color data for anything that you don't want color for. Perfect. So obviously we've got a couple that stick off the edge a bit, but that's not an issue. And if I actually had a light in here, it might be really easier. I think I've got a light in here somewhere that looks good. I use a 3K HDR because I don't want to blow the computer up. Not really a suitable HDR for this, but you get the idea. And then you have a much more natural looking grass. Now you'll notice that I only made this one tuft. If you want even more realistic grass, the idea would be that you would make multiple tufts out of different ones of this so that it doesn't look so uniform, because obviously at the moment it looks very uniform. And then you would put them all into one group, and then rather than object here, you'd select group and you select the group that you want. I didn't do that because that would take longer, but that would be what you ideally want to do. And you can have grass that looks much more realistic. This grass is also very green because I think I use quite a disproportionately green texture. But yeah, grass. I hope you can find it useful. If not, well, find a better tutorial, I guess. Alright, good luck.